What is up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Swinging Sunny Scan. Today we're going to look at the markets, see which way we think the market's going to go in the coming week. We're going to go over some previous ideas we mentioned last week, and following that we're going to go through some new ideas that we're looking at for the coming week ahead. But before we get into the market, guys, any of this content helps you out in any way, please do me a huge favor and smash that like button. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more content like this in the future. Hit the bell if you want to get notifications anytime I put out new content. Let's jump into the market. Last week, and looking at the S&P 500 E-mini futures, we're going to look at the market. You can use the SPY, that's the S&P 500 ETF. I personally find the ES is a much smoother chart to look at, and it has more trading information than the SPY ETF. Last week and the week before, we saw a big bounce up into the 4,600 area. We were looking at a retrace here. Along this retrace, we were pinpointing three separate areas where we could see a possible bounce, where I committed to taking at least one trade if I could find one around this area, which was an area at the end of a couple weeks ago where the moving averages, both the 21, 50, and 200, were kind of clustering in an area. The other area was around here where we have a bit of a 60% retracement from the bottom of this pivot to the top of this pivot around the 4,300. And I was also looking for a possible bounce around this area, which is the 4,100 area. Do have to say that on Friday, the market definitely put in one of the best cliffhangers at the end of any week of this year. Reason being, I feel that the market has closed at a perfectly neutral area. And to me, that's a cliffhanger because I really don't know which way the market can go. No one does, but I have no conviction on any direction, at least for the next 5 days for the coming week. So last week, we were talking about a bottoming tail happening on Friday, which I mentioned that it looked like the market was going to try to bounce. It didn't, it failed, and then it headed back into this resistance area on Wednesday and Thursday, put in 2 green days, which again looked like it was going to try and bounce, but then again got completely engulfed by a wide range red bar, and we're currently smack dab in the middle of a major support area. So there's 2 scenarios that I'm going to be preparing for, and both of them involve a bounce. So in my opinion, the first scenario that I'm going to look at is the market breaking down below this area. But what I've found is a lot of times when the market breaks through an important support or resistance area, it tends to fail and reverse into the opposite direction. So scenario 1, what I'm hoping is a breakthrough and then a bounce, at which point on this bounce, I'll be looking at taking in some shorts with a potential for it to reverse again and head back down. So to draw kind of what I mean, starting at the beginning of the week, what I'm hoping is a potential break through the support area, a failure of this breakdown with a bounce, possibly with a pretty good extension back above the support area, and then another reversal to finally break through and head further towards the downside. Scenario 2, what I'm hoping for is we do end up bouncing in this area, just like we see here on this trajectory that I drew a few weeks ago. We bounce one last time without breaking the support area, and then finally breaking through, heading down to the downside. In both scenarios, the game plan is the same. We're going to be looking at short ideas on this bounce. And so this week, the ideas, what I'll be looking at are still some long ideas, because I think if you were okay with taking another long idea at this point, it's not a bad area, because the market is basically putting in a double bottom retest, and this could easily be the bottom for the market for a long time. We don't know that. We're gonna have to wait and see, but it is a good area. But I took my one trade in this area already and it failed. So I'm done with longs at this point according to my plan. We'll go through that idea in a minute. And then I also have a short idea which I'll be watching for that potential bounce. But I'm hoping if we do get a bounce, I'll have time for another scan to see what other stocks are bouncing with the market and looking relatively weak overall for a potential short with the market. My current open trades at the moment are exactly as they were last week. RBA lowered my stop. ATSG rose my stop just below this, what looks like a possible pivot area. Both RBA and ATSG, I already took half profits, so riding out the last half, hopefully to target. Otherwise, I'll just trail out. RBX basically flirting with my stop and not looking great at all. However, this is a long idea which I will keep just in case it will follow a bounce with the market. So I have one short, two longs. I'm good with the long ideas that I'm currently in at the moment if we can get a bounce in the market, and I have one short if the market wants to continue down. I'm already loaded with one short. Last week, this is an idea that I mentioned, CMCL. This one basically had a really great green change of color bar, and what I mean by that is there's been a lot of red bars retracing to this really great support area here. This day on Thursday, it was the first green bar in a long time. I took a trade as soon as it broke the highs, and it immediately tanked and engulfed all four of these bars, including the green bar on Thursday, and stopped me out in a day. Said it before, I'll say it again, this is trading. All trades don't work. The idea is taking trades that have at least a 50% probability of success with a good risk to reward, and at the end of the day you're going to have losers because you can't win on every single trade. That's unrealistic. Nobody can do that. That's not a real thing. You must have losers. This one is simply that, a loser. But with every loser and every winner, we can look at it and figure out what there is to learn about it. So a bit on the psychology side, I know that for myself, and I think other traders could likely relate to this, is that when you're on a winning streak, which for February and March, we've had a pretty decent win rate, especially compared to January, a longer win streak and an increase in your win rate, a lot of times your confidence tends to get the better of you. And the reason why I'm saying that is because in last week's video, I mentioned this trade and said the words, I will likely ignore this trade. And I said that because when I was looking at this chart, all these bars tend to be very overlapping and choppy. When that happens, if you have bars that are choppy and overlapping, and you're using a strategy like mine where you're getting in at the highs of the candle using the lows as your stop, if the bars are overlapping, it is very likely that you're going to get stopped out because that is how the stock is trading. So if I continued to stick to my plan and I didn't look at this and overlook that detail with confidence, thinking, oh, I'm on a winning streak and I think I've picked another winner because I've been picking winners lately, then I can look at this and go, okay, I think this was a situation where I may have been overconfident. Let's slow down and refocus. But on the positive side, in terms of this retracing to a awesome pivot here being a support area and the risk to reward, which was a perfect 3R, some of this trade was fine, but the overlap is something that I'll be watching closely for future trades. Again, there's something to learn in every trade. Last week we also mentioned TNP. This one did bounce last week. For me, there is no entry on this one, and again, this was one that I mentioned I would likely be ignoring due to some quality issues. One mainly being the large gaps on this retracement, and for me there was just simply no entry. Last week we mentioned DAR. This one again, low quality. Still mentioned it last week because I thought it was worth mentioning for a watt. Again, earnings is up close for this one. Nothing really happened. For me, the entry would be above this bar, but it never broke above, so there would be no entry for me regardless if I like this or not. All right, let's get into some new ideas. NBR. This one has a bit of an overlappy look. After we just got done talking about stocks with the overlappy look, this is one I will have to review with caution. However, the risk to reward on this one is looking pretty good. It is pretty far away from the support area, so we're not seeing any kind of area of support that could give us more confidence on this trade. We are heading right into this red line, which is the 50 period moving average, which could be something. We are right after earnings, so that gives us plenty of time to hold. This one does look like it's a grinder, so maybe we see a bounce and it grinds slowly for a few weeks, but decent idea to look at regardless. Next idea, WOW. This one is super close to earnings, but with the fierceness of this retracement, possibly the bounce could be a decent one too. Right now, this red bar for me is way too wide to do anything with just yet. And again, look at all this overlap in these areas here. This is a really choppy chart. So I think what I'm going to do is ignore this one as well, but I will continue to watch this one just in case it does something interesting, but not of the best quality. UNM, this one has a pretty choppy chart as well, but same idea, guys. It's heading into some support here around the $29 area. After it breaks through earnings, if we get some orderly trading with some narrow range bars, the risk to reward is looking pretty good, but again, not the greatest looking chart, so I might ignore. HALO. This one was one that we called potentially short in the past. This one would have worked. I don't think I took this trade, but we are now looking at a situation where this put in a triple bottom. We broke through a support area here and we are now retracing. This one with the theme of overlapping choppy stocks is not as bad as some of the others that we're looking at. Reason being, when it is moving in a direction, it tends to have pretty orderly, smooth moves. We do have a consolidation area here that looks like it might have been chewing through some sellers up in this topping tail area here between 42 and 41. It broke through, but then we saw a pretty steep pullback. If we got some narrow range bars in here, maybe closer to the 200 period moving average where the 200 period and the 50 period are connecting, you know, that could be a decent area. This one's pretty far from being ready for me right now, but I think this one is probably close second idea, maybe even best idea between this and NBR, the first idea. But we'll watch and see what happens. MKL, this one is a Range Rover. This one has really decent range. So we can see, firstly, there's not a ton of huge gaps between these bars, especially relative to the risk. I'm basically gauging a possible risk size, basing it on this consolidation range. So what we're also seeing is a pullback into this support area around the 1340 area. This one is a huge priced stock, so this one could potentially chew up a lot of buying power, but anyways, we'll see what this one does. This one looks like it has a lot of potential if we get some narrow range bars around the support area, looking for a reversal back to the upside around the 1500 area. Next idea, PDCO. This one has quite a bit of wide range concerns. So I mean, we have a huge bar here. This is a $4 bar in range, where the average is probably close to 50 cents to $1, but we are heading to a pretty interesting support area here around the $30 area. We have earnings in the way, but it's about 17 days, so that's about 3.5 weeks, so still enough time to possibly trade this one. We wouldn't likely see a move back up to this pivot here, so we might want to consider trading this one one to about 50% if we can get the correct risk. So even though earnings is not that far away, I think we still would have time to trade this one. Something else to see, this is a tested support area where we came back and retraced and bounced from here. I do not mind taking bounces on a full retracement as long as there's a support area and the smoothness is smooth. And if our target is not all the way at the top, having expectations that it could at least get to 50% is reasonable. So this one I will watch in the next few days. Next idea, STRA. Again, another kind of wild and choppy overlappy stock, but we're getting some wide range bars here, which means we might see continued momentum. And if we get continued momentum down to this $60 area, I think that's a really solid support area. You can see for a while this stock was really trying to get over the $60 psychological area for quite some time. 1, 2, 3 with a big green bar, and then 4, finally we saw a breakthrough. So this area will most definitely be an area that a lot of people will be watching and potentially buying for another scoop. All the people that were selling into this resistance area are probably kicking themselves now because there's a huge jump, and they might be so frustrated and filled with FOMO that by the time it gets back down to $60 area, they might be like, you know what, I'm getting back in because this stock is certainly gonna go higher. And with that could definitely provide enough buying power to get us with a reversal back to the upside. So, and lastly, this is my one short idea. Man, what's up with all these choppy stocks? This one is so choppy. But the reason why this one interested me is because, first of all, this is a very typical top. It's typical because it's very choppy. It's wide range, erratic, and going sideways with some topping tails. And what we've seen now is these moving averages are starting to curl down. We've broken through this support area of $30. We are now bouncing back up, testing this $30 area. The 21 and the 200 period moving average have now crossed. And although this area is kind of like a box, you can see a bit of a topping tail situation here, a little bit of a drop, and then a green bar with a topping tail, which to me looks like a retest. So this is not my typical pattern. There's a lot of signs that this stock could be heading down. Another sign that this could be heading down, look at the monthly chart, look at how steep this pop and rally is compared to what it did for several months. It was kind of in a range between $5 and $15, and it was in that range for 2,922 days or 96 months. Since this rally from the top of this range to its highest point at $40, it increased by 100% in 3 months. So basically this stock is super extended. It obviously has a lot of indecision on whether or not this stock should continue to be bought up and continue to rally. And it has since lost the confidence that it's worth $30, and we are now retesting that $30. Looking at the weekly chart, this looks like a pretty decent sell setup pattern. Look how smooth these bars are coming back up to retest that $30 area. Even though this one is super choppy, I think if we put in a risk that can protect us against any wild choppy moves, something like this, with a target distance that is fairly equal to this move that we put here, I think this one has a decent chance to put in a decent move downwards. Now the problem is I'd rather get into this one after a bounce on the market, but waiting for this one to go sideways a little bit longer also weakens this trade because this one looks like it should be ready to go on Monday. So we'll see. I have one short in the portfolio already. It wouldn't be a terrible idea to maybe add one more, but again, I'd rather start adding shorts in after a short bounce or a bigger bounce in the market. But for some reason, this one is really interesting to me. So we shall see. Well, if you stuck it out to the end, thanks very much, guys. I appreciate anyone who stuck around and watched this video. Put down in the comments what you think the market is doing. If you're watching this at a later date, tell me what the market did. did. Were we off? Were we close? Did we have no idea what we're talking about? Put it down in the comments. Let me know what you think. If any of this content helped you out, please do me a huge favor and smash that like button. Hit subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. Hit the bell if you want to get a notification anytime I put out new content. Thanks, guys. Trade safe, be well, and we'll catch ya on the next one.